Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. Today I have with me Maxie Greene. Maxie is a spiritual coach and speaker who helps women of color and allies glow up in every aspect of their lives, and is also podcast host of the podcast Love Black People, which is about helping people rewrite the rules about what love is supposed to look like. So I'm very grateful to have you joining me, Maxie. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so excited.
Me too. I love any of these kinds of conversations. And as I mentioned to you previously, like what drew me to you and wanting to have you on as a guest is just how freely you speak and how freely you share Maxie and what's going on with Maxie. And it's in a really beautiful, insightful way. So on your podcast, you share a lot of like personal stories. And what I love about it is that it's not about saying like, these are the rules for relationships and love, but you're sharing and encouraging people to kind of rewrite or to understand what their own rules are. So what started you with your own realizations about your own rules for relationships?
I think really the relationship that I was in at the time that I started the podcast was just really, it was really difficult. It was really challenging. It was really different than any other relationship that I've been in that, to put it simply, he's a little bit more of an asshole than other people that I've been with, like he's not like he yells and he swears and he hangs up the phone and he gets mad and he has all these rules and whatever. And it was really like, I'm not used to that at all. And, in the culture that I grew up in and that my friends grew up in, it's very much like, you don't let a man talk to you any way he wants to. And we don't put up with this. And you don't look like you don't want to look like a fool. And like, I remember, I think I talked about it on the podcast like the first time that he yelled at me and hung up on me, and I was just like, well, obviously this relationship is over. I can't be I can't be a person who's in a relationship with someone who yells at me. Like that's like, it's not even like, it's impossible. And then I realized like that's my mother's voice and that's her thing, which is really ironic because my mother is a champion grade A yeller. But like I realized like I was able to see for myself where all of that behavior comes from, right? Like it's a lack of coping skills or emotional intelligence, whatever you want to call it. Hopefully never listens to this, it comes from wound, right? It comes from fear. And I could see it really clearly in those moments. But my mother's voice, like these external voices of like, what do I look like? What brand of fool are people going to call me if I, and then I just realized like, that's so silly. Like, it's just, it's insane to me how long I spent living by like this idea of like, what are people going to think about me? And I know that other women, like other first generation women like me, we all grew up with the same messages from our mothers. And it's not like our mothers were in these wonderful, amazing relationships. Like they inherited shit from their mothers too, right? So I just was like, you know what, we all need to just start just doing what makes sense. And like, I think like, God, if I had really like listened to my mother's voice in my head and like ended that relationship the first time he yelled at me, I would have missed out on so much good stuff, and not just good stuff in the relationship, but so much expansion within me. Like I have such a greater capacity for compassion and understanding that I never would have gotten if I hadn't learned to stop listening to my mother in my head and like see beyond the behavior. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, it's great. I loved everything. but you're right. Like it is, because so much of our internal narrative is the voices of other people or our own voices worrying about what other people will think.
Yeah.
Especially in relationships. And like I remember feeling that a lot as a teenager, but like it also seeps into adulthood and to different things. It's like, oh, like what will people think if we argue?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, actually, like, you know, depending on the kind of arguing, it's probably healthy. You know, like relationships that don't argue are not healthy, generally
Right.
speaking.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
you know, like it's such a balance, and this is, I think, why, you know, it is so important that we find our own rules about that, because, you know, it's such a balance between people's voices, and then people who are caring about us and checking in and going, yeah, you know,
Hmm.
like, how do you feel about that? Or
Yeah.
hopefully only asking, how do you feel about that, rather than telling, especially
Yes.
as grown ass adults. And
Hmm.
then our own going, yeah, how do I feel about this, and what is it? So it's like, it's this,
Yeah.
all of these layers we have to work through
Right.
that. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and
So
it was really interesting to me because I would have thought that I was like past the point of worrying about what people think. You
mm,
know, I went through that period of time of being like a people pleaser and worrying about being judged. And I learned that like I don't give a shit, you know? So like mom guilt and all that kind of stuff, like I don't have that shit. I don't care if I'm giving my kids lollipops in the schoolyard at before school starts and other people, like I truly don't care. But so many, I know so many moms do worry about that kind of stuff. So I kind of was like I'm above it. Like I don't concern
mm,
myself with what other people think. And then I got in this relationship and was like, whoa, this is like a whole area of like this fear of judgment that I had never even realized was there. And that's what I think was so interesting to me, like how deep it ran in me, that like
yeah.
I'm really, really programmed by this point of view of like my mothers and my aunts, that like I had never even considered looking in that direction when I was, you know, excavating
Yeah.
stuff.
That's
Yeah.
it. And it's also like, it each time it happens for me, it's the question of, am I being fear of judged like unreasonably, or is it because something isn't actually aligned? You know, because then
Hmm.
you have to like unpack even that layer of like, oh, is
Yeah,
this
for
like an
sure.
unreasonable fear of judgment, you know, just because it's conditioned in me, or is there something in this story, in this relationship, that is not aligned, and it's
Yeah.
speaking up in that way as well? So
Hmm.
how did you navigate that as you started to navigate this?
Yeah, you know, I think that was probably a really challenging thing because for me, like, once I was able to sort of see compassion and like see the wound and see the pain and see and like have compassion for that, then it's difficult and it still is difficult to find the balance between like, I feel all this compassion for this person, but also I am hurt and impacted by this shitty behavior. And so
Mm,
I really struggle. And yeah, I think even more so now that that relationship is over and we're trying to be friends, where it's like, to what degree can I put away like my hurt feelings or my unprocessed feelings and show up for this person, despite the fact that he has caused me pain? And like, to what extent does it feel good to do that? And that's kind of like the barrier, you know? I think I always know, I always, even in the at the time in the relationship, like I always knew when it was going too far and I was sort of bypassing it. But I think it's a worthiness issue ultimately, is what I'm trying to say. Like I had to really sort of take a step back and say, like, am I showing this person all this compassion and grace and acceptance because it's what I really feel? Or am I doing it to prove how good of a person I am? Like, look at me. I'm such a generous person. Like, I'm such a lovely, wonderful person that, like, even though you broke my fucking heart, here I am offering my friendship. Like, I had to really take a step back and be like, is this genuine? Like, what do I have an agenda here? And then be like, okay,
mm.
yes, I do. And so let's reframe that. And I think that's really the hard part, is like, because I identify so much as like an empathetic person and a compassionate person, I have the pull always to let that be the total of it, where there I
Mm.
am also a person who wants to protect myself and have boundaries and feel good in my relationship. And that's kind of like where how I'm finding the balance, is like, does this feel good? Like, does
Mm.
this feel good right now? Like, is this sitting right in me? Or does it feel, because I think you know when you're compromising yourself, you know it. And so now I'm just trying to kind of listen more and say, like, this is genuine, this is performance.
Yeah. That's like that's some like deep level awareness shit also, because like when you're in it, and I know I've been in this position in the past more so, because like, you know, the more you learn about yourself, the more you learn about yourself. But like
Mhm.
when you're in it, it's almost like your brain is like looking for excuses, be like, yes, of course this feels good, la la la. But
Yeah.
it's really unpacking and being willing to be honest with yourself in that too, isn't it? Where you go like, okay, yes, and is this, like, what's my motivation here? Am I trying to prove
Mhm.
how good of a person I am, or how much I can handle or myself to them because of worthiness? Or like, is it
Yeah.
genuinely okay?
Right.
Mm,
Yeah, exactly. And it's like a daily sort of dance, I think, of like
yeah.
finding that sort of sweet spot of like, I'm not trying to earn anything here, but I am also trying to be the best and most generous person I can be, while also like holding that generosity and compassion for myself.
Mm,
So it's an interesting thing. And I think a lot, like I said, I've never been in a relationship, like a volatile relationship
yeah.
before. um but it's really kind of like, it blows my mind all the time, like how much expansion comes out of conflict. Like in the past I would be like, a person who triggers you to this degree is probably not the person for you. But now I think like, holy shit, like look at all the like skills and like awareness, like you said, like all of like the soul searching and checking in that I've had to do in order to like maintain myself in this kind
Mm,
of environment. And it's not just with him, like it's also like in all of my relationships where there's conflict, right? Like
yeah.
it's really changing the way that I approach that. And it's been really interesting. And like it changes the way I coach, it changes the way like I show up on social, it changes the way I interact with people. It's been really like, wow. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's it. Hey, like, and I think um with the, like, because geez, you're good, like with the friendship piece, right? Like I've gotten
Mhm.
to the point, because I've, tried to be the friends in the past, but it's to my own detriment. So
Mhm.
like I've gotten to the point where I'm like, well, no, like you don't get to be, because
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah,
like,
I
there
agree.
needs to be a break. There needs to be
Mhm.
a processing time, regardless of whether you think, like, we think we need it or not, because that's still, like, I think for me it's measuring how much energy I have to put into it. If it feels easy and like I don't have to really put in any energy into like thinking about what the interaction is, or overthinking the interaction and going, oh, is it appropriate to message at this time so soon, or whatever that is,
Yeah.
then I know that I'm in a good place with it. But
Mhm.
it's like it has to get to that point. And with the conflict in, because there's always going to be some kind of conflict in relationships, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
regardless of how it shows up. So it really is just measuring, it sounds like for you it really was just measuring what was worth it versus what was potentially damaging also.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like, I mean, ordinarily, I don't believe in being friends with somebody after I break up with
Mm,
them. I don't have any friends who are exes, and he doesn't either. And we even talked about it like during the relationship that like, yeah, if we break up, we're not going to be friends. Like that's not happening. But there was a long a longish period of time where we weren't talking, and it was just really painful. I was really concerned about him. Like all the
mm,
rest of this shit aside, I was worried. Like and it was weird. Like it just did not feel right. Like because I knew it wasn't aligned. Like I had been like, you broke my heart. You don't deserve my friendship. I'm not gonna humble myself by reaching out to you. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna worry, I'm gonna stress, I'm gonna frantically check your Instagram to make sure you're still alive. But I'll be damned if I admit that I miss you and I want to know if you're okay. And then eventually I had to be like, but this is torturous. Like
mm.
I'm not sleeping. I can't stop thinking about it. Like it's ridiculous. This is not like, that's not productive. And that's like another thing definitely that I internalized from not so much my mother, but like my friends. Like, you're going to go crawling back to somebody who broke your heart. Like, what the, like, and I really felt like kind of embarrassed almost. And then it was just like, but yeah, but I need a good night's sleep. And I'm up all night.
Yeah,
Like I'm up every
it's
night worrying about this to prove a
exactly,
point,
it's looking at
you
the
know?
two different sides of like,
Mhm.
what is good for me right now, what will help me,
Yeah.
and kind of be damned with the rest. But like with friends, for example, how do you
Mhm.
navigate that when friends speak up in that way? Because like they speak up from a caring place, but
Yeah.
like
I
it's
mean,
always challenging.
It's interesting, yeah, because I had a friendship end once because I felt like she overstepped. And it was really funny. I'll tell you this story because I have no shame. But like when I was in my last relationship before this one, which was quite a long time ago, I had, you have these people in your life that are like, you never were really with them. So they're like always like that one that you wish. Anyway, so I was in this relationship with dude number one. And then dude number two, the one who got away, was like coming around or whatever. I was saying to my friend, like, I'm probably going to cheat on dude number one. Like, I can't resist dude number two. I can't help it. Like, he's like kryptonite to me. And she was like, well, then you need to break up with dude number one. And I was like, excuse me. And she was like, if you're going to cheat on him, you should just break up with him. And that's like a hard barrier for me. Like, I never tell people that they need to end relationships. Like, never, ever, ever. It's not my place. And it's not anybody else's place. And she wasn't wrong. I mean, I was plotting to cheat on this person. Like, yeah, I should have gotten out of the relationship. But it's just like, I don't accept it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't put a lot of stock in other people's comments or advice. Concern, yes, absolutely, if it comes from a concerned place. But I mean, if it's coming from a place of judgment, and if it ever starts with like, you need to do this, you shouldn't, whatever, I'm pretty good at like just shutting that down. Like, you know what, we're not going to go there because it's not your place. And I'm very conscious about not going there with friends. I will always say, like, what is it that you want from me right now? You want me to just listen? You want to know what I think? What I wish for you, whatever. But like, I always stop short of drawing those hard lines in the sand because relationships are so complicated. Nobody ever knows what's happening, except even the people inside of it hardly ever know what's happening inside the relationship.
Rarely.
Yeah. So I'm good in that way. Like, that's a barrier that I find, or a boundary, I should say, that I find really easy to maintain because it's just like, it's not productive at all. And I always tell people, like, I'm not going to tell you to break up with this person because if you do it and you're up all night crying your eyes out and you can't sleep, I will be fine. Right. Like, I don't have to carry the pain. So you have to decide. And I really believe that people leave relationships when they're supposed to and when they're ready. And me saying leave never changes anything. I didn't leave when that girl told me to leave. I cheated on the dude. That's what I did. Like, I wasn't going to leave because she said you need to break up with him. I did what I do, so yeah. I guess I should have listened.
Like, there's so many layers to that one in particular as well. Like, it's kind of, but it's regardless of who was right or wrong or anything like that. Like, and that's quote unquote right or wrong if you're only listening to this. But like, regardless of that, it's still privileging your friend, for example, like, like another person with their own journey and their own decisions and their own mistakes to make if they're going to, like, it's, to me, that looks like there's another layer there of, like, okay, well, maybe, you both look at, well, do our values align, or do our, like our morals align, or whatever that is, right? But that's a separate piece to it. But aside from that, it's not the coming in and going, you should do this, because it's still like, well, it's your choice and you're right. Like, it's up to them if they're ready to spend their nights crying because they've broken up with someone, like that kind of thing. Or if they're like, they have to kind of get sick of the bullshit enough to be ready to do that sometimes.
Right.
And
exactly.
So that relationship, what is that? You have a name for him on the podcast, or is that someone else?
The current, or the immediately former one, or the one that I cheated on, that I should have just broken up with?
No, sorry. Yeah, you're right. The one you were talking about when you started the podcast, you're in that relationship.
Well, I call him Mr. Max.
Oh, you call him Mr. Max? Okay.
Yeah, that's how I refer to him online, as Mr. Max.
Yeah, cool. Gotcha. So that relationship ended during the podcast. Yeah,
it ended in February, right before the week before Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Oh, great. How great is that?
The only thing I'll say is that I'm quite sure he was not even aware that Valentine's Day was coming. because he's one of those like doesn't process dates kind of thing. And so yeah, and then I think I only recorded one more episode, which was the last one called Heartbreak, or Heartbroken, because I had always intended to do just like a short season and then recalibrate. And so it just so happened that like that the relationship ended. I was a basket case. And
I remember you were
yeah,
going through something.
Yeah, like when we first met, we first connected, like, and thank God I came into this soul flow community. Like, thank God that was there, because honestly, like these people that I didn't know from Adam like 2 months ago fucking saved me. I don't even know what I would have done if I didn't have people to like be like, hey, it's okay, you can ugly cry in front of me. I know you don't know me, but you know, it really has. And I remember at the beginning of the breakup talking with Heather and saying like, I just don't want my mind, like I just would not allow my mind to consider the possibility that like anything good could come out of it. I was like, this is devastating. My life is over. I'm going to blow up my business. Like nothing is anything. My worldview is destroyed. And I just was like, I don't want to hear this. Everything happens for a reason. It's for the best. Like I refuse. I know that that's a thing, but in this instance, there is nothing that can happen that can ever justify the fucking pain that I was in. And then now I look around and I'm like, holy shit, I've done so much healing in this period of time because I was able to connect with other people and let other people see me and like talk like this. Like I would never have said before, like my heart was broken and I was devastated. I would have made a joke about it. And like, holy moly, I never would have been able to like connect with you guys and talk with you if I hadn't been in so much pain, you know, like I had to be like broken to the degree that breakup broke me in order for me to be able to reach out. And it's been like so expansive, and it pains me to admit it that a lot of good came out of that breakup.
Yeah, I sort of have more of the belief is not so much that everything happens for a reason, though, like, but I don't believe in coincidence either.
Yeah,
but it's more that, especially in the painful moments, because like, you know, there's so much trauma in the world. It's like, what's the reason? Like, you know, but it's more that there's an opportunity in everything. You know,
definitely.
And it's really beautiful that you had that experience of being like, I also feel like, you know, when we're in the midst of that kind of heartbreak, we shouldn't make big decisions that blow shit up. Like we can make big decisions that expand us, you know. So if it means like travel, great, travel, like if you can.
Yeah.
But like, you know, but you know, don't even get me started. Oh my God. But like, but you know, like if it's expansive things, make those decisions in the first 10 days after a breakup. You can do that, but like don't blow shit up that has nothing to do with the relationship in that 10 to 14 days after, because like there's a recalibration that's happening, and you know, then you can make that decision. But what was, because I haven't had a chance to listen to that episode yet, but I did flag it. Like I was like, oh, that's there. Okay. Like what was that like, if I can ask, what was that like to share publicly?
It was kind of natural, I think. Kind of natural, kind of not. It kind of felt like this is what I would be doing if I wasn't afraid of showing my vulnerability, kind of thing. So it felt like this is what like the truer, higher version of myself would do. But it also, what it really was, it wasn't so much about sharing as that it would have been like insanely disingenuous of me to show up on that podcast and talk about anything else. Like I could not have recorded any other episode in that time period because I was consumed by pain. Like it just, I wouldn't have been able to, I mean, I could have done it physically, but like I would never have recorded something else because I've had that experience in the past of like masking what you really feel in your content and having like people like trolls attack you because you weren't being truthful. Like it was like, you know, so, and also, but I didn't want to not make an episode and close up the season because I had made this, like, I have always identified as this person who like flops on my commitments and doesn't finish things and whatever. And the podcast was like, I'm going to start this and I'm going to do it and I'm going to show up every week and I'm going to prove to myself that I can finish something, even if it isn't like, you know, number one on the iTunes charts. So I had to make an episode, and I couldn't have made an episode about anything else. And that's really more what it was, other than like my highest version of myself would share my truth. And I mean, I recorded the episode and I didn't listen to it. Like, even like the little snippets that I posted on Instagram, usually I pick like a really interesting part of the episode to record a little video for, or it's cut it down for Instagram, but it's just the first minute because I didn't even want to listen. Yeah. Even though like most of that episode is, here's what I'm doing to get through. It isn't really like talking all about how bad it was. Yeah. It was really just like, I'm doing this and this and this and this is helping. And also, if you're heartbroken, come find me because I'm here for you, because I really felt really alone in that period of time. So yeah, it was kind of just like, I couldn't lie. Like, I'm not, I mean, as I'm sure you know, like I can't really fake the funk. Yeah. And I would have hidden, but I promised myself that I wouldn't just not finish. So I had to, well, I guess we're talking about this now. So.
I guess this is the only option. Great.
So, and I was like, nobody listens to this podcast anyway. And then I get like, not so many, but then people are messaging me and being like, oh my God, Max, I'm so sorry. I listened to your episode, like whatever. And I was like, oh really? I really thought nobody was going to listen. Which is what I think about everything I put out, you know? Yeah. Like I did that IGTV video the other day about Mr. Max. And then he called me the other day and he was like, I watched your IGTV video. And I said, I'm sorry, what? I was like, what? How? And he was like, I follow you on Instagram. I was like, oh shit, you do? I didn't know that. But I really like, I never think anybody's going to watch anything or listen to anything I create. And that's a little bit probably part of why I'm so open. So I was like, nobody's going to read this.
Yeah, but I feel like that's the key to creativity, is to not worry about who might be listening. Or who might be watching, because otherwise we would filter, like, and I've done this so many times, and I this podcast is probably part of that process of not giving a shit, like, you know, like, because I care, but I do give a shit, but also not giving a shit, like, but it's the key to creativity is to not, is to almost, for me, it's almost to like delude myself into going, no one's actually listening, so I can just show up and be me, and then and then people get me. So like it's like, great, that's great. And then you can, it's just that I think that's important. I think that's so important to.
Yeah, I read this, or I was on this live stream a couple of weeks ago, and the coach asked the question, like, she was like, pay attention to how many things you do in a day that are designed to elicit some kind of reaction from other people, good or bad. Like, are you doing this to seem responsible? Are you posting this to seem wise? Are you saying this to seem like you're a good person? Like, are you doing this to make someone laugh? Or like, how, she was like, pay attention to like how much of what comes out of you is like your true truth, and how much of it is designed to get some kind of reaction. And I've been just had that in the back of my mind the last few weeks. And I've been like, holy forking shirt balls, you know, like everything is trying to get some kind of reaction. Like, it's really hard to find that like pure distilled nugget of truth. And like, and I think like saying, well, nobody's going to read this Instagram post is like a good tool for like, I'm just going to put this out there because whatever, you know?
Yeah. It's also like the letting go of control. It's like, and like, no one's going to read it, or I don't know who will, so I can't control who will. But you know, like it's important to me. So I think that's a really cool practice to get into. But something else you said as well is like, you know, acting from the place of who you want to be rather than, you know, who you are almost. And that's been a really big theme that I've seen show up a lot in the last month or two. And I've been doing that a lot for myself too. Like, but there's been a lot of practices that have shown up in that way too. And I think that's a really potent place to come from, because it helps us expand, and it sounds like it's helped you expand as well. Like, so like you said, rather than it being well, I'm, you know, like you said, I'm someone who doesn't finish things, I just flop on things. You're like, well, what if
yeah
if I want to be someone who like follows through on things, what if this is, this is how I show up here with your podcast and everything like
Mhm.
that, and then you followed through and you kind of completed that piece. So what does that feel
Yeah.
like on that end of it, to sort of start to rewrite that story?
It's been really good. It's been really sort of satisfying to like kind of play around with, like, I don't have to live by these descriptions that I have created for myself, and being like, you know, with the podcast in particular, it's been really interesting because it's like I did it. People had been asking me, I mean, not to sound like whatever, but like a lot of people have asked me over the last few years about starting a podcast because they used to be a sex and relationship blogger. And so a lot of people who
Mm.
follow me on Instagram now are people who read my blog back in the past when I had a sex and dating life, which, and so it was something that I was like, oh, someday I will, someday I will. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to make 10 episodes and I'm going to post them on time and I'm not going to whatever. And then I've done that. And in the episode, at the end of the last episode, I say, like, I'm not sure if I'm going to bring it back. Like, I don't know if it fits in with where my work is going or where I'm going. And it's like, I forgot what I was going to say, but like, it's been good to kind of like have the experience of like I created something that was like that went full circle start to finish,
Mm.
and like I can let it go now also. Like it doesn't have to be like, well, I started this podcast, because not long after the last episode, like maybe like a week or two before, this girl messaged me and she was like, oh my God, I love your podcast. It's like you're singing my life. I can't believe it. I just binged the whole thing. She was like, she's like a Haitian, like first gen Haitian
Oh
immigrant. She's
wow.
like, your
Yeah.
mother sounds just like mine. Like, I can't believe it. And then after I posted the last episode saying like, I don't know if I'm doing this anymore or not, she was like, please don't stop the podcast. Please bring it back. I can't believe I just found you. And it's been really interesting to be like, the old me would be like, well, people want the podcast, so I have to keep making it. And this me is like, I don't know. I've done that. I don't know if I want to keep doing it or not. And it's not, if I do bring it back, it's going to be because I have more things to say. And it's not going to be because, oh, all these people promise to pay attention to me if I bring back the podcast. It's going to be like I don't have to do what other people want me to do. And that's been a really nice feeling.
Yeah,
for sure.
that's awesome, because like it's nice on both sides. Like you kind of like, especially when you're in business, it's nice to hear from people and say, oh, like, all right, what I'm putting out there is actually helpful. Really great to know. So like, for the record, for anyone listening, for both of us, like
Please
it is
message us and say you love what we do.
it is really helpful to know, because it like because that's what we're in the business of doing, is hopefully helping people, right? But at the same time, what we do and what we create as humans in that business needs to feel aligned and needs to feel enriching and needs to feel fulfilling and light us up, because that is the whole point also. So it's really cool that you get to have that balance. Like you get to experience the balance of, yes, that's nice, and I don't know, because I don't know how that feels yet. And that's kind of like a really empowered place that you're sitting into.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, because I think like the work that we do, which by the way, as a side note, I just have to tell you, like, I love your reels so much. Like you have these like fucking nuggets that are like, oh my God, this is so good. Like the one, was it today when you were like, ask yourself if this is mine to carry? This emotion is mine to carry or not?
Yeah.
Like,
is it mine?
I was like, God damn, this is so good. But yeah, like I think that being like a coach and being and like having this like burning desire to help people, because like I became a coach and I do what I do because of like who I was when I was in my 20s, and I was like so alone and I felt so invisible and like nobody gave a shit about me. Not even like people didn't understand me, like people didn't even see me. And I just think about these women out there that feel like that, and I just want to be like, I see you, come here, let me hug you, like whatever. And that's all beautiful, but it also creates like it's a real delicate balance between that and see me, love me, think I'm worthy. Like I want people to like my content and for it to resonate with me. And that does make me feel like I'm contributing and making a difference. And those are all good things, but it's a very fine line between that and I'm worthy, I'm worthwhile as a human being because my content resonates. And that's like something that I am really, really struggling with
Mm.
always is that like, people don't sign up for my offers. People don't like my posts. People don't click my links. Oh, I'm a piece of shit. Nobody cares. I'm fucking stupid. Why did you ever think that you could do this? You know, like
Yeah.
honestly, like my relationship ended and I was like, I'm burning my business to the ground. The seed has just bruised. I'm a fucking failure. It's like always comes back to that story. And so it's been, so the podcast thing in particular has been good for me to just be like, I did it. It was over. People liked it. That's great. But I'm not going to attach anything more to it than that.
Yeah.
Because there's attachments all over the place in this kind of work for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about like looking at things objectively and going, okay, like this is, you know, for me, like I love having these conversations. So my podcast just doesn't have an end date at the moment because I'm like, no, because like it's not just me talking. I think that's the difference also. It's like, oh, I get to talk to someone different every week. And I get to have these amazing, like interesting conversations every single week. And that feels like it fills me up. And it's the same thing. And I know that there are like nuggets of value because these people have, you know, have so much wisdom to share also. So it's sort of like from a business point of view to look at it from that label, I guess, is to go like, okay, I'm a businesswoman also and a coach. But from a business point of view, that is a good business decision because it's giving value. But I don't have the attachment of, it's still the balance of I don't have the attachment of how many people are listening to it. And then when I don't have that, but I get the experience and then I get the reactions and I get the surprise. Like if I go to look at the stats on, you know, the podcast platform and go, oh, there's people in like every continent, like that, you know, like
isn't that wild? Yeah, the podcast stuff.
I get to have this surprise of, oh, even if it's like 8 people, you know, that's 8 people. That's amazing. So it's
true.
It's just this nice balance in business to go, yes, this feels like a good business decision because it's adding value and it gives me more to share that adds value, and it's filling me up and lighting me up along the way.
And that's like, that's the best, for sure, the best way to be, that it's not like I have to do this or my business is going to come crashing down, which is like my other thing. Like the other day I had this idea, it was the Instagram IGTV video I did about adventures in embodiment, which I had originally had the idea to do it as a live. And I have like a story in my head of like, I'm terrified of doing lives. I hate, like, I just get so nervous. I hate it. And also like, I am never going to have like the level of success I desire in my business if I don't do Instagram lives. And I literally sat here in my office for like probably like 2 or 3 hours. And I was doing all kinds of like tricks to try to get myself worked up to do this live. I was like asking for signs, like, should I do this? Whatever. I was so resistant. And then finally I was like, do you want people to hear what you have to say? Or do you want to do an Instagram live? Like this, it's a story, right? You have to do this. You have to have a podcast. Like so many people say, you have to have a podcast if you have a personal brand, right? You have to do this.
I don't get paid for this shit. Like, you know
what
like...
I mean, right? Like it's like, like I'm sorry, I didn't get not one coaching client from my podcast, which is fine. But like these attachments that people create, these experts create, that like if you're not showing up on stories 5 days a week, people are not going to know, like, and trust you, and you're not going to make it. And it's like, then I get in these tailspins. And I just was like, you know what? Calm the fuck down. Do you think anybody's going to watch that video and be like, well, that was really interesting story, but I really wish you had done it as an Instagram live, like that I would give some credence to it. But since I was just like, it's an interesting point. This was an interesting insight I had. I want to share it. I'm not going to make myself do lives if I don't like doing them. But the question is always, do I really not like doing them, or am I afraid to do them? And that's a whole other thing.
But it's a good inquiry to have. Like it's a good check-in to be like, oh, is this because it doesn't light me up or because I'm terrified?
Yeah, because I think it's like those attachments and those stories that we create in our minds that like mess us up so much. It's like coming, full circle to what we started. Like things, there's no should of how things should be. Like I should be in a relationship where this happens, and my boyfriend should do that, and I should do this, and I should do this to build my business. And it's like, that's all made up shit. And that's really like, I've been doing like a lot of like trying to get to like the essence of like what my messaging is as a coach. And it's really like, you're living by bullshit made up rules that are actually a thing. Like there are no, it's an attachment because you made it one. Like I have to do stories in order to succeed in my business is a story I made up. You know, my relationship has to look like this is a story you made up. Make up a different story.
Yeah.
It's fine. You know, I mean, it's easier said than done, but that's really what it all is, right? It's
that's the crux of the message. It's like, this is like our life in those kinds of decisions are really our own rules, and we get to make them up. And if we're showing up genuinely, especially in business, but in general, like in relationships, if we're showing up genuinely, then isn't that what matters? Like, isn't that how we don't dilute the value?
Right, exactly. It's just being like, just telling your truth, you know, like nothing bad is ever going to happen. I always tell people like nothing bad is going to happen to you because you were generous. Nothing bad is going to happen to you because you told the truth, and nothing bad is going to happen to you because you acted out of love. Like we attach all this other extra stuff to it, but it's really just like, no, if you're just yourself, nothing bad is going to happen to you. And it's like anything that happens to you that you categorize as bad is just a story. Change the story and make it into a good thing. I don't know. That's my
oh my god, I love that so much.
It's easy, like I said, easier said than done, but that's what I really, really believe.
So speaking of, where can people find you and follow you and your work?
Okay, you can find me everywhere on all the socials as the Maxie Greene, but Green with an E on the end. I apologize. And my website is maxiegreene.com. And our podcast is on Instagram at loveblackpeople.co, or you can, that's also the website, loveblackpeople.co. And I don't know, you may see me back on there. I've been feeling the pull lately. We might have some more Love Black People sooner than later. You never know.
Yeah, I'm excited to see if anything more comes out of it. So
it's like I have an idea for one episode, sorry, and then I was like,
no,
I gotta go this season because I just one episode that I want to do. Okay, sorry.
No, I love that so much. It's just part of your process, right? But thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your story and your truth and helping our minds kind of explore what our own truths are as well. So I really, really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I love talking to you so much. Thanks for having me.
Me too. Okay.